Welcome to Behaviour Driven Development with Daisy, part 3. I have no idea how far I'm going to go with this series, but I'm just going to kind of keep on going to try and add more and more complexity to what I'm doing, just to sort of just to try and fill out more of the capabilities of I guess SpecFlow and the stuff we're using. In this part, what I'm going to do is create another scenario that's relatively similar to the first two, but some small changes, and then look at a more complicated scenario. And I've actually copied these scenarios from another project, or another solution file, because I'd already got them kind of worked out there, so I'm going to kind of paste them in here. In fact, what I'm going to do, so what I've done here is I've got some scenarios. I've got a few scenarios, and what I'll do is I'll fill out some of them now, and then maybe save a couple of the more complex ones for later. But you can see I've got a scenario here the first two we went through were patient is stopped, patient is removed, and we said there that if the status was stopped or removed, then the NDD should be null. And it was quite a simple one. And I've now added a third one that says if the patient's active but doesn't have any prescription items. So I appreciate some of these things, what these terms are, the NDD and all that kind of stuff. It's just the domain logic of the project in question. That's kind of slightly irrelevant. But here we've got a patient that's got no prescription items, and I've said, describing the requirement, given I have a patient and the patient NDD has a value, and the patient status is active, and their prescription is empty. When I recalculate the NDD, the patient NDD should be null. So that's all kind of quite good. And you can see here that having added these in there, 3 of these lines have come up purple because 3 of them match steps that I've created before. Given I have a patient, exactly the same as before. When I recalculate the NDD, exactly the same as before, then the patient NDD should be null, exactly the same as before. So you can see that there's this reuse of these terms. So there are two kind of key aspects to that for me. One is the recognition that actually this does a lot of the work for you, in that when you've created these lines, you can generate the code scaffolding based on this. It's obviously very valuable. The other thing, which I think is relevant, particularly if you've got a non-developer writing these, is understanding that you want to try and reuse these terms. So because it's written in English, you could say things like, you might write for one scenario, given I have a patient. You might say another scenario, given I have one patient. And those two things may mean exactly the same thing. And if they mean exactly the same thing, then you should write exactly the same line. Don't start mixing up, given I have a patient, given I have one patient, because obviously that means then the step, it won't match to the step you've created, and it just means that when then a developer comes along and is going to generate the step definitions behind these scenarios, they might have to go and edit those scenarios a little bit to say, actually, I understand that these lines should have been the same, so I'm going to go and make them the same. So the more care that we can give to these scenarios, reusing things, not varying the types of language we use when we're referring to exactly the same thing, the easier it will make things further down the line. Okay, so let's give this a go. I've added in some other scenarios as well. I'll go through those in a bit. Don't worry about them for the moment. We're all kind of quite fancy and got some clever stuff in there. But for the moment, let's just try and see what happens if we run. Let's just save that. And now let's just run our tests and see what happens. So we're looking up here to see what's going to happen. We've got 2 tests that have passed, which are our 2 first tests, and we've got 3 tests that have not passed. And it's saying it's not passed because it's missing some step definitions. So we're going to go into here, we're going to say generate step definitions, and actually it's picked up all of the step definitions that are missing from the file. I'm just going to see what happens if I just click the generate, because I think if I hit generate, it'll try and create a new class file, which I don't want. Yeah, it tries to generate a new class file. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is from here, go generate step definitions. I'm going to copy those methods to the clipboard, go across to my the file with all my steps in it, and just paste them in. So now having done that, why is this probably giving me that? Huh. Interesting. I'm not sure why I put that in there. We'll take that out of there. Yeah, it just duplicated one of the steps from earlier, which we didn't need. So hopefully now, it's because I've used single quotes rather than double quotes around that. It's probably the same as the one below as well. Patient status is the I've got a few little things here where I've got the obviously my other project. I've just put things in with slightly different text, so different case sensitivity. So I'm just going to edit these and just make sure. So this again possibly shows the importance, having just sort of stressed the importance of don't go and kind of like utilize things which aren't matching. I've then gone and done exactly that. So I'm going to do that, and I'm now also going to go back to my scenario here. I'm going to delete those lines. So I think they're the ones that I added. But that's patient ID should be null. That's probably right, isn't it? That's probably okay. So now I should, so now it's actually It's actually highlighting less because it's matched up some of those. But I'm just going to go. Patient entity has a value. What's the patient entity set today? So let me change that to today. So let me just change that. So this is exactly what I was talking about before. So in this scenario, in this situation, I'm testing to see that the NDD gets recalculated to being null. But in order to ensure that that calculation has done something, I needed the NDD value to not be null before the test started. There we go. So we need to keep that one in. We need to keep that one in NED sets today. Keep that one. Yeah, I needed to make sure that that the entity value there had a property had a value. And so in this, when I wrote these scenarios in the last video, I used the line and the patient NED is set to today. Here, when I did it in a previous project, I wrote and the patient NED has a value, which is effectively I'm trying to achieve the same thing, and I just don't want it to be null. But so again, what I'm going to do here is just go and say, I'm just going to take that line and just make it the same there, because then it reuses the same step. It achieves exactly the same result as far as my test is concerned. But it just means I don't have to write a kind of effectively a kind of duplicate step definition. So now let's generate step definitions. So slightly less step definitions to generate. Go back to here, paste that in. Oops, didn't do that very well. Go back to there, paste that in. Go back to here. Now we've got all of those. Right, okay, we're there. So more complicated ones, I'll come back to those. Let's deal with a simpler one. This is very similar to the one before. I have a patient. Patient NED is set to today. Patient NED is set to today. Status is removed on that one. Status is active on this one. And their prescription is empty. So I've not even bothered talking about the prescription before. So we've now got to do that one. Recalculate the NED. NED should be null. When I ran the test before, I had the no matching step definition error. So if I run that again now, I get a slightly different error. 2 tests have passed. Now I've got things here where it's saying one or more step definitions are not implemented, and that's because again we've got this scenario pending reference. So given the prescription is empty, so what I want to do there is basically do something to say that the patient prescription, which needs to be a list of things, has a count of 0. So in order to do that, I guess I need to come back to here, and I need to add something in here to say something along the lines of list prescription prescriptions. I guess it's going to be something like that. So I've got prescription class now. What does that give me here? Why can't I do that? Do that. Okay, so now I've got a list of prescriptions. And I wonder if, do I need to, I guess we'll see soon whether I need to initialize that or not. So I want to say something along the lines of patient dot prescriptions dot count equals 0. No, I don't want to do that, do I? What do I want to do? I need to, no, I want to empty that. So, right, let's try clear. So hopefully that means we've got an empty. I'm assuming that there'd be an error there because it's not been initialized, but we'll see. We'll come back to that. What else did we say? Patient prescription is empty. NDD should be null. So actually, I think we've done all. Hopefully, we've done all this now. So let's see if that works. So that's failed. Why is that failed? So I wonder if that is. I wonder if we just need to do that. Right, so now we've got something kind of quite interesting. This is now failed. NDD expected to be null, but was that. So that's good. So now we can go back and look at our calculator and say what's going on. So if we're saying if it's stopped or removed, then set it to null. We're going to and we're doing there. We might actually just say. Let's just put that there and there. So, right, so we can say so patient is active. So we want to now say if patient dot prescriptions dot count less than or equal to 0, technically we could have actually made this test pass by doing stuff even simpler than this, but I'm being kind of slightly kind of generous. I mean, I could literally just say, whatever, patient ended equals null, and then just return patient, and it would work, and then we would use further cases to explore this. So even as things are, technically, what I'm doing is too much. I could just do, if I wanted to. How do I do this? How do I get a? Okay. Yeah, I could just do that. Just take that out of there. And I could just do that. Just say patient is null, return patient. It'll succeed for this if I just do. In fact, let me just show you. If I do that, it passes. Almost certainly, when we then come on to future scenarios that say, okay, and there is a prescription, I'll need to edit this. And I guess this gets to the heart of BDD. The idea is you only write the code, the minimum code necessary to pass the tests. So even on that rule, well, this gets to the heart of TDD and BDD. You only write the minimum code necessary to pass the tests, and then you just keep on adding to those tests to explore the complexity of the logic further until you have a complete specification. And even on that, even trying to just write the bare minimum, I'm still writing too much because I'm writing all this logic around this. And this is, I'm absolutely going to need to have this code, but I don't need it yet. It's a So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to leave it like that. I'm just going to do that because even that's probably more complicated than it needs to be. But I'm just going to leave that because the test passes. And it's now up to me to come up with more scenarios that demonstrate that code, as it is, needs to be more complex to meet our functional requirements. The idea being you write the code because the test fails, not because you want to write code. That's it. Really, really quite straightforward. In fact, maybe I'm going to stop that there, and in the next video we'll talk a bit more about this more complex one and some of the data that we're passing across and do something fancy with that.